Hey, what's up, everyone? I don't know if you watched my last video, but I'm obviously having a little bit of a rough day. So I thought I'd just do something to get my mind off of this stuff. Think about something else for a minute, and thought I'd read this little pamphlet that I found while I was going through all my estate sale stuff. Some of you might have heard me talk about this guy that I knew in Fresno his nickname was Hawkeye, but his name was David S. Downs. Actually, his son was a police officer in Fresno. Never met his son, but I got to go through a lot of David's things. Got to read his story about Vietnam and how he got blown out of a helicopter, caught on fire, and melted to another person, and just went through all kinds of weird stuff in his life. We had a lot in common. He was a photographer. He did band photography. Did photos of all kinds of bands live, Led Zeppelin, all kinds of bands. Took photos of models, just like me. A bunch of stuff. The guy was a genius, and it's some kind of contract for guidance systems for the Navy. He did all this stuff out of his house. I've been to his house, and I saw these. He showed me this stuff. These microscopes, digital microscopes, video microscopes that would zoom in way past a regular microscope. Anyway, stuff that I had no clue what was going on, but he ended up dying of mesothelioma. And after he did, that's when I received some of his things. I got a bunch of his 35mm slides from his photography. I was going to use those to make posters. Put his name on the bottom of the poster and maybe sell them online, or do something. And I never had the chance to do that. I ended up battling this whole targeting thing and getting sabotaged and redirected and everything I did. So I never had quote extra time to do that. But one of the things that I still have from here, I'll just a little closer. You can see his name right there, David Downs, maybe, possibly. But this one on the front says holography. So I just thought I'd read it to you. I'll do the best I can. Of course, my cognitive function's not good today. All right. Holograms, an overview. It's a 3D picture. Big deal. The usual Intel response to hologram images does not produce the reaction that a revolution in communication would seemingly justify. And the type on here is very small too. So, the hologram will completely alter and expand now existing methods of visual reproduction, such as movies and television. It will create new forms of viewing previously forbidden areas, like seeing through fog, rain, water, walls, tissues. The possibility exists that we will even be able to create pictures of objects that do not even exist. Sit tight, we will come back to this later. Now, David wrote this in, it's not dated. He's citing, then maybe it'll show a date in here somewhere, but he's citing, bibliography here, like 1969, 1970. So, this was a long time ago. All right. Visual communication is the most important and versatile method of information transferal. Old Chinese proverb, one picture worth 1,000 words can be expanded. If you realize that conventional pictures only convey information in 2 dimensions. The third dimension is limited to one plane which can be viewed from only one angle. A hologram is a true 3-dimensional image which can be viewed from any angle and includes all of the planes of the objects. A hologram projected into a 3D screen, like smoke or water, becomes a photographic figure of the object. We can walk around to the back of the screen and see the rear of the object. Simple enough, right? They do it in movies all the time, except, get this, the holograph is made from only one shot from one plane. Also, a photograph is made with a lens to archive sharp focus and can only focus in one plane. In a holographic process, no lenses are used and all objects near and far are portrayed in its image in extremely sharp focus. Sounds great, but what's the trick? Well, it's like this. Holography and photography are 2 ways of recording. On film, information about a scene we view with our eyes, yet the basic mechanism by which they accomplish their purpose and the image which result are vastly different. I read this a long time ago, but I just put it away. I didn't have a YouTube channel or anything. As the words holo, meaning complete, and gram, meaning message. Oh, I didn't know that. Holo means complete, and gram means message. Connote, the holo captures the entire message of the scene in all its visual properties, including the realism of 3 dimensions. The photograph, on the other hand, collapses into one plane, the plane of the print, which is all the scenic depth we perceive in the actual scene. I'm having a hard time reading this, it's tiny print. The first demonstration of photography by a French scientist, Louis Jacques Mondi Daguerre. Oh, Daguerre, like daguerreotype? Yeah, that's probably the guy that came up with the daguerreotype. In 1839, yep, that's probably who came up with that, because daguerreotypes lasted through about the Civil War. And then they came up with film. Lulled many who followed him into assuming that he had found the ultimate procedure. Daguerre sought to record the image found on the ground glass screen of much older invention, the camera obscura. Period. The camera obscura was a box fitted with a lens at one end and slanted mirror at the other. The image was then collapsed onto a planar ground glass screen at the top of the box, where Daguerre's new light-sensitive material recorded this collapsed image. Not until 1947 did British scientist Denis Gabor conceive of holography, a new method for photographically recording a 3-dimensional image of a scene. It merely involved recording the pattern formed by 2 interfering sets of light waves, one of these sets being a reference wave. Period. Jeez. Although Gabor conceived his idea rather recently, he was still too early. For the special kind of light needed to demonstrate the full capabilities of holography, a single frequency form called coherent light was not in abundance until 1947. So that was right after World War II. It became available only after the laser, a new light source, was developed in 1960. Okay, so lasers were developed in 1960. I didn't know that. An atomic process called stimulated emission is responsible for the light generation in a laser. And the word laser is an acronym forced from the word light amplification by the stimulated emission of radiation. A coherent light wave for holograms must have two features. One is frequency coherence, light from a laser, particularly a gas laser, is to exhibit an extremely high degree of frequency coherence. For example, the note A on the music scale has a frequency of 440 cycles per second. A laser produces a frequency much higher, 4.8 by 1014 CPS. But it is of a single wavelength. A musical instrument which produced a note of exactly 440 CPS, probably cycles per second, would also be called a producer of a pure single wavelength. Laser waves also are very uniform in their shape and travel in the same plane. Spatial coherence, non-plane waves may be of a single frequency but badly jumbled and mixed up. Sodium vapor lamps, for example, are single frequency, but the light is sprayed out in a random manner. Sodium vapor lamps, they use those to grow plants. Indoor farming, basically. Thus, two problems exist in archiving coherent light: good frequency coherence and good spatial coherence. Ordinary light sources, such as incandescent lamps, are noisy in nature, exhibiting a very poor degree of coherence. In forming a hologram, two sets of single wavelength In forming a hologram, the sets of single wavelength light waves are made to interfere. One set is that reflecting from the scene to be photographically recorded. Invariably, this is, okay, if you're wondering why I'm having a tough time, this is the print, okay, what I'm trying to read. It is an extremely complicated wave set. The second is called the reference wave. And in reproducing or reconstructing for the viewer the originally recorded scene, a set very similar to the original reference wave set is used to illuminate the developed photographic plate, the hologram. The two sets of hologram waves are caused to interfere at the photographic plate. All points of this scene that were perceived are emitting or reflecting laser light to a certain degree. Each point will have a different degree of brightness, yet each reflecting point is a point source of laser light. If a laser reference wave is also present, each such source can form on a holographic plate its own circular interference pattern in conjunction with the reference wave. The superposition of all these circular patterns will form a very complicated interference pattern, but it will be recorded as a hologram on the plate. When the pattern is developed, fixed, and re-illuminated, reconstruction will occur and light will be diffracted by the hologram. causing all the original light sources to appear in their original relative location, thereby providing a fully realistic three-dimensional illusion of the original scene. If that did not make sense, try this. The most important thing to remember is that a hologram is not a record of the image. The most important thing to remember is that a hologram is not a record of the image of an object, that is, a photograph, but a stored record of the reflected light waves emitted by the object as they interject with the reference waves. The hologram can be compared to slicing an object into slices one wavelength thick, 0.00007 centimeters. Taking a copy camera picture of each slice, Taking a copy camera picture of each slice, the clear negative. The copy negatives represent the planes of reference light waves, and the dark areas on each negative are the intersection points with the object light waves. Now attack them into a thick sandwich. Now stack them into a thick sandwich. The negative would have coherence, all aligned and the same distance apart. And you would see, looking at the edge of the stack, the side view of the object. This would be what is similar to a 3D picture found in hand viewers. To make this box stack of negatives a truly 3D picture, it is only necessary for the plastic film sheet to stay perpendicular to your line of vision by rotating as you move to leave the black image floating, so to speak. This would enable you to look behind, around, and inside features of the object. Shining a laser or coherent light creates a row of parallel clear plastic sheets, standing waves of light. If we then place a hologram in the light beam, the patterns for each sheet, the black areas we talked about before, are all stored on the holographic plate and match up with their respective sheet in the proper sequence to form the 3D object, which appears to stand out from the plate because your eyes focus at each plane, something a camera lens cannot do. It focuses only at one point and gives a collapsed or flattened image. So it shows, a diagram here. A photographic image works a couple different ways. So read these diagrams. Through the use of light source, lens, and photographic plate, two-dimensional image of a three-dimensional object is recorded. This one says projection of a photograph image. Focusing a light passing through a photographic transparency onto a surface results in a static two-dimensional image of the object. Okay, and then this shows some diagrams of how the holographic image works. The holographic camera, the beam emitted from the laser, is split into two parts by the beam splitter. Each part then passes through a lens which spreads the beam. The reference beam goes directly into the photographic plate. The object beam illuminates the object and its light scatters off the object onto the photographic plate, where it interfaces with the reference beam. The interference of the two beams causes the pattern which stores the information about the object. So that says the holographic camera, and then the reconstruction of a hologram. The beam of coherent light emitted from the laser illuminates the hologram, and the reflected light waves from a three-dimensional image in the eye of the person viewing the hologram. These waves projected back towards the illuminating source appear to come from an object located at the same point of the original object. Okay, this one right here says, it's a picture, I'll show the picture. A laboratory setup demonstrates how RCA Selectivision tapes will be recorded. A thin blue laser beam emerges from a gun. Does it say background or background? And is split in two. One branch passes into apparatus in the center of the picture, though the movie film that is being recorded, and through the movie film that is being recorded, and finally arrives the plastic master tape. The other branch bypasses movie film but joins the first branch at the master tape to reproduce an image of the hologram form. I don't know if this is a picture of a holographic camera or what. I'm guessing so. Let's see, this is a picture labeled tape, laser, and lens. Okay. God, could they make this type any smaller? Another laboratory model shows how the selector vision system works inside the honing player. The vinyl tape with hologram imposed on it runs through a low-powered red laser beam. The holograms are converted by the beam into visual images, which are placed up by a lens-like tube and relayed onto the TV set. And it shows this. All right, and then it says, let's see, it goes into three-dimensional television. Oh, there's a few pages left here. Why not? I don't have a lot else to do right now. Well, I do, but... Three-dimensional television. So much for theory. What will the holograph do to everyday life? Would you believe 3D television? The RCA video cartridge viewer, it is like a cassette tape recorder that plays television instead of just music. Will produce 3D pictures called holograms. Surprise, original program material is transferred onto a master tape for mass duplication by means of laser beams split into two branches. One branch is beamed through the original film, a Technicolor movie for example, in order to gather up the image, and then onto the moving strip of master tape some distance beyond. The other branch of the laser is being beamed, reference beam, at the same spot on the tape but does not pass through the movie film. Instead, it is deflected and delayed by mirrors in such a way that when it reaches the tape, it's no longer in phase with its twin. The conflicting waves of converging light produce an interference pattern, which is burned into the smooth surface of the master tape. The result, an almost invisible landscape of cracks and ridges, is known as hologram, and is in effect a three-dimensional abstract model of the original movie. For mass production, copies of the original holograms For mass production, copies of this original hologram pattern are stamped out in vinyl plastic. The vinyl copies are then wound on spools and packaged into cassettes. During playback inside the Select-O-Vision home player, another laser, a very feeble one, shines through the tape and unscrambles the pattern without erasing it. According to Life magazine 1970, this viewer is slated for the market in late 1972. So do not buy that color TV just yet. Better things are happening. We still don't have holographic TVs yet. Maybe somebody kept that patent going somewhere with this. Postage stamp memory banks. A 35mm holographic picture frame can store 90 million dots. Compared to 250,000 dots for a regular frame, like TV film. A single piece of microfilm stores 100 times as much as picture film. How many dots on a holographic microfilm? How many dots on a holographic microfilm frame, kids? Question mark. This really freaks out the computer people who can foresee storing all the information now on data files in the world in one machine. I'm going to read that part again. This really freaks out the computer people who can foresee storing all the information now on data files in the world in one machine. For example, a 10mm by 10mm film frame contains 100 1mm squares. A 10 by 10 holograph frame contains 1,000 1mm cubes, each with 6 sides. You think Big Brother? Holy shit. He wrote this in 1969. He said, "You think Big Brother is watching you now?" He said, "You think Big Brother is watching you now?" Exclamation point. Another feature of the hologram is that a small segment of the plate will reproduce the entire scene because the pattern of the image is recorded. With a pattern of something, it is possible to reproduce continually. In holography, this process is called reconstruction of the apparent image. So Mr. Downs, Hawkeye, wrote this in 1969. Wow. Flying blind or look no hands. Laser or radar waves can penetrate fog or rain. Radar is very limited now because it can watch only one plane or area at a time and cannot see around mountains. It is two-dimensional. See around mountains. Not so with a holographic radar display. A pilot can on the viewer see around objects in front of him and in a general sense will be able to view the entire scene just like you watch your RCA Select-O-Vision at home. Remember that holograms are produced by the interference of waves. This means any wave, light, sound, X-rays, or even radioactivity are all electrons traveling in waves. Remember physics 2B. I don't remember that. Never made it into physics 2B. And therefore, it is possible to reproduce 3D pictures of anything that will reflect a wave motion. A holographic electron microscope will produce pictures of atomic particles and submicroscopic structure. An X-ray viewer will show pictures of inside the body or through walls. Let me read that again. An X-ray viewer will show pictures of inside the body or through walls. Better get ready for lead clothing if you value your modesty. Okay. Heading on this is 3D movies shall return. CBS, under the direction of Dennis Gabor, refer to the first page of this paper if you forget already. CBS, under the direction of Dennis Gabor, refer to the first page of this paper if you forget already, is perfecting holographic movies using stereo holographic films. Mr. McCombs has a handout on sign holography. It is possible to record a large number of different images on the same plate by rotating the plate in the viewing plane. A double image plane is now common. By rotating the plate 180 degrees, an entirely different object is viewed. With the correct equipment, it is possible to record as many different objects or scenes as the grain of the plate will permit. Sonar, sound waves, holographic viewers are being developed by the Navy to make 3D images of objects underwater. Voice images would identify the person speaking just like a fingerprint, except the 3D voice print would contain a cubic power of information. Let's see. Are you sure this was here before? Question mark. It is possible to create images of objects that do not even exist in the ordinary sense. If we put an opaque screen between the holographic plate and the image being reconstructed, there is still another image in front of the plate called the virtual image, which can be viewed because holographic projectors do not use a lens to achieve focus. If we can reverse this process to make a plate, it is possible to recreate an image that did not exist. I am firmly convinced that when this process is perfected, the theory of simultaneous time sequence will be proved because the view will be of another time dimension, perhaps another world. Let's hope they are friendly. I'm going to read that again. Are you sure this was here before? It is possible to create images of objects that do not even exist in the ordinary sense. If we put an opaque screen between the holographic plate and the image being reconstructed, there is still another image in front of the plate called the virtual image, which can be viewed because holographic projectors do not use a lens to achieve focus. If we can reverse this process to make a plate, it is possible to recreate an image that did not exist. I am firmly convinced that when this process is perfected, the theory of simultaneous time sequences will be proved because the view will be of another time dimension, perhaps another world. Let's hope they are friendly. Next chapter. Paragraph. Who is on for supper tonight? Mom? Question mark. The next TV you own may create life-size people in your living room who, if American Telephone and Telegraph get their magic box working, will talk back to you through your computer talk back to you through your computer voice recognition of your question. One ad I saw talked about Plato and Blackbeard, the pirate, sitting down and talking about their lives to a family at a dinner table. The holograms will enable man to increase the span of his technology, not by doubling, but by cubing, in that it brings the concept of 3 dimensions to communication. Its greatest benefit is that a picture will now represent practically all the aspects of the subject as a model. It can be magnified or reproduced without loss of detail. No lens, remember? It presents the possibility of faster comprehension, something ordinary printed material had a little trouble doing because it still required translating or visualizing to a real-life concept. Let us hope that instant communication increased by a power will help mankind get along better than some of the other scientific discoveries did. It is kind of hard to imagine the holograph as a weapon, but I suppose that is what the atom people said too. Okay, bibliography. George W. Stoke, An Introduction to Coherent Optics and Holography, 2nd edition, Academia Press, 1969, Fresno City Library. Winston E. Koch, K-O-C-K, Lasers and Holography, Doubleday, 1969, same as above. Finch College of Art, In Dimensional Space, Finch College Press, 1970, Fresno State Library. Harry Knowles, Popular Electronics, Ziff David Publishing Company, New York, New York, January 70, reprint. I'm just going to read this last paragraph again on this last page, page 12. The hologram will enable man to increase the span of his technology not by doubling, but by cubing, in that it brings the concept of 3 dimensions to communication. Its greatest benefit is that a picture will now represent practically all the aspects of a subject as a model, and can be magnified or reproduced without loss of detail. No lens, remember? It presents the possibility of faster comprehension, something ordinary printed material had little trouble doing because it still required translating or visualizing to a real-life concept. Let us hope that instant communication increased by a power will help mankind get along better than some of the other scientific discoveries did. It is kind of hard to imagine that the holograph as a weapon. It is kind of hard to imagine the holograph as a weapon, but I suppose that is what the atom people said too. I'm not even going to go into what's been talked about lately about the... I'll just end that there. So that's by David Downs, my old friend. A guy named Zach Keller, K-E-L-L-E-R, worked for him and some of his buddies. And worked on a bunch of automation type things. Holographs as a Weapon, huh? Written by David S. Downs, aka Hawkeye. Probably the smartest person I've ever met. In 1969. And he got that information, well, not all the information. but he referenced 3 books from, well, I guess if he's referencing books from 1970. So this was written right around 1970, okay? 1970. If you don't think that there is technology that currently exists that is highly classified, that has been absorbed by whoever, large corporations, our government, both merging, whatever, that can be used as a weapon and very possibly will be here in the very near future, you should probably keep thinking about that maybe. Everyone have a great day.